Hello, everyone. My name is Frederick Aardema, a researcher and professor, and one of the co-creators of Inference-based cognitive behavioral therapy. What is Inference-based cognitive behavioral therapy, or I-CBT, as we call it? I-CBT is a cognitive behavioral therapy for OCD, but it's different from standard CBT. And this is mainly because of its focus on obsessions and how it conceptualizes obsessions. Because in I-CBT, obsessions are primarily viewed as doubts and also inferences of doubt, a conclusion about what you think might be true or could be there. So, for example, the doubt that perhaps you did not lock the door correctly, or the doubt that you might be contaminated, or in the case of unacceptable thoughts, you may have the doubt that you could be a dangerous person that could do harmful things to others. All of these are obsessional doubts that set in motion all kinds of consequences. Like, for example, if you forgot to lock the door, then perhaps you worry about your house being robbed, or that your family will be unsafe. And so you feel anxious and start checking the door repeatedly. However, while all these consequences are distressing, they are not considered to be the principal problem in OCD from an I-CBT perspective. What is the problem in OCD is the inference of doubt that precedes all of these consequences and sets the obsessional cycle in motion. But I-CBT goes back even further than that. Not only does I-CBT explicitly address these primary inferences of doubt that set the cycle in motion, it also looks explicitly what is behind them, what is behind these doubts. Because if obsessions are inferences, this implies there are reasons behind these doubts. They do not come out of nowhere, they do not occur randomly, but there's actually a story behind them. And this story is often provided by those with OCD themselves. Because when you ask people with OCD, why do you think your hands might be contaminated? Or why do you think that the door may not have been locked correctly? Or why do you think you might be a dangerous person? They often come up with a story. They come up with reasons. It does not come out of nowhere. It does not occur randomly. And that is the essence of I-CBT. Obsessions come about through reasoning. There is a story behind them. And the therapy is focused upstream, not on the consequences, not on the appraisal of intrusive thoughts or the obsession, or even the anxiety or the behavior, but on where do obsessions come from to start with. Because once you take care of the obsession, then maybe you can also take care of all of the consequences and all of the distress that comes with OCD. So there's a story and reasoning behind obsessional doubt. Like, for example, the person stands in front of the door and thinks, maybe I did not lock it correctly. What could be the reason behind such a doubt? A person with OCD may come up with reasons like, maybe I did not pay enough attention, or maybe there is dust in the lock, or maybe I did not turn it correctly. And notice that these are all possibilities that put doubt into what was actually seen and sensed. And this is exactly what OCD does. OCD always tries to bypass all of your senses, or dismiss your senses as irrelevant and fallible. And these reasons give credibility to the obsessional doubt, even though they ignore or even go directly against reality and what is seen and sensed in the here and now. And this is not how we normally reason, not for the person with OCD either. In many situations, they don't have this problem. It is often quite specific in OCD, where they reason differently in other situations as compared to the obsessional situation. Because normal doubts come about in a different way than obsessional doubts. Now, with normal doubts, let's say, staying with our door example, when would this be a normal doubt? Let's say I turn the key and I hear a crack as I'm turning it. In that case, there is direct evidence in the senses. There's evidence in the here and now that would justify a doubt like maybe it is not locked properly. In OCD, this does not happen. There's no basis in reality for the obsession, not in the here and now, not anything that is happening in the senses that provides direct evidence for the doubt. Or anything that is really happening in itself. In the case of unacceptable thoughts or unacceptable thoughts, there's nothing directly justifying these doubts. So the person with OCD doubts without any real sensory evidence, which is what we call inferential confusion, where the person essentially confuses imagination with reality, because the doubt is constructed on a completely imaginary basis, not on the basis of the faculty of perception. It is imagination It provides credibility to the obsessional doubts entirely, which is also what makes obsessional doubts 100% irrelevant to the here and now. And this is what the therapy focuses on. It educates the client on being able to differentiate between normal and obsessional doubts, being able to recognize the imaginary construction of obsessional doubts without any actual evidence, and how this makes obsessional doubts entirely irrelevant. Also, an understanding of the selectivity of the obsessional doubt is a very important part of treatment, because those with OCD already use their senses normally in many other situations. There's nothing new to learn, except to see how you reason differently in OCD situations and to see how obsessions are fundamentally faulty conclusions. So in therapy, we compare obsessional situations with other situations where you do trust yourself in your senses, and how can you do the same thing in obsessional situations. For example, when you cross the street and you look left, right, and left again, do you have any thoughts like, maybe I did not see correctly? Maybe the sun was shining in my eyes and I was temporarily blind? No, you trust yourself and you trust your senses. And so you cross the street on that basis. So there the reasoning is different. And there's no reason not to do so in obsessional situations and reason in the same way. The only reason you do not is because you apply a faulty reasoning that is based in the imagination alone. So what is also an important part of treatment because of that is the construction of alternative narratives. These are narratives that are more based in the senses and lead to a different conclusion than with OCD, because OCD is incompatible with anything that really occurs in the senses, in the here and now, or anything that actually resides in the person. And I-CBT specifically addresses feared selves, which is about the type of person we fear being or becoming, which can drive obsessional stories, because why create these imaginary narratives to start with? I-CBT tries to bring those with OCD back to their authentic selves and how to trust oneself and the senses again in obsessional situations. Then, once the anxiety has reduced sufficiently, we may also ask clients to practice staying out of the OCD bubble. The OCD bubble is a situation during which people with OCD typically engage in all kinds of rituals, analyzing neutralizations, but all that this accomplishes is reinforcing the doubt and creating more doubt. So we ask them to hold still in between reality and imagination and realize there's a moment of choice there. They can go either into the OCD bubble or go back to reality. And just one of the exercises, and once there is a little bit more choice, a little bit more of a sense of agency, we ask them to actually go into obsessional situations, which is what we call reality sensing, during which you were asked to do things normally without any compulsions. And this is not intended to produce anxiety, like in exposure therapy. It's the opposite. Because when you do reality sensing right, you do not have obsessions or feel anxiety, and you just trust your senses and act accordingly. We want those with OCD to do things without any doubt and effort and anxiety. So in I-CBT, the doing follows from the knowing, as opposed to the other way around. To give those with OCD the same certainty that we all experience in our daily lives and to live accordingly.